Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today we are back with another TU13 topic I've seen some people discussing recently, that being if this coming update and content should have a PTS or not, because we've seen them do both in the past. Warlords and TU8 did not have one, whereas TU10 did, and those both released in very different states, and I think the ultimate question is, what's better, surprise or stability? Very quickly, before we dive in, I have one big announcement to share, that is, if you're watching this on the day it's posted, then tomorrow, which is Sunday, September 19th at 5:30 Pacific or 8:30 p.m. Eastern, myself and some fellow creators and streamers will be hosting a Division 1 Last Stand event for Xbox. Thank you so much to everyone who participated in the poll on my community tab earlier this week to show up if we had enough interest. Basically, what is happening is that myself, Kamikaze Von Doom, Bishop Boas, and Kong Style, along with some few others potentially, will be live across YouTube and Twitch by 5:30 p.m. Pacific or 8:30 Eastern, right? That's when we'll be live, and then we'll give everyone just a few minutes to get into the stream and get onto the game, and then roughly 10 minutes later, at least, by like 5:40 or 8:40, we're all going to jump into the Last Stand queue on Xbox on the Division 1. I had well over 40 people vote that they would show up to this event on my channel. All three of those, these other guys that I'm streaming with tend to pull even more viewers than I do during my streams, and so it's fair to expect them to attract some of their viewers to the event as well, and I think it's just going to be a ton of fun. We'll go over, we'll play for a few hours, do several games, and we should have enough people for there to be multiple, like simultaneous games running at once. So I really can't wait. So mark your calendars for tomorrow, Sunday the 19th at 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. Just get onto the game and then tune into any of our 4 streams to see when we all go to queue up. And please show up, especially if you marked on the poll that you would. The last thing we'd want is for there not to be enough people, but like I said, I'd find that hard to imagine happening with all of our combined audiences and the usual folk who are playing that on Sunday evenings anyway. So yeah, I hope to see you all there. Please show up and tune into the stream for exact details. I'll be posting a reminder about this on my community tab tomorrow morning, as well as periodically on my Twitter and TikTok. So thank you all so much. Now let's get into the discussion. So, PTSs. In case you're new, PTS stands for Public Test Server, and it's something that the devs will implement, usually for PC only, when they're trying to test out a new patch before it goes live. The influx of the general population can help them find bugs, fine-tune balancing, and other things that would be hard to do with a small QA team. They've implemented this practice back during the Division 1's 1.4 update was the first one they ever did, and I would say almost every time they've done it, it's been beneficial. This is a big if they give it the proper time to breathe and flourish, and we'll come back to that. But there's also been several times where they chose not to have a PTS. Like I mentioned earlier, Warlords of New York and TU8 for the Division 2, and that was mainly to keep the surprise of the new expansion fresh. And while some of you may say, well, that's a stupid reason not to have a PTS, I'll happily admit that surprises are fun. Right, when I jumped into Warlords in the days after it released, and all of a sudden I got an exotic chess piece to drop for me at the end of the Viewpoint Museum run, I was astounded. I consider myself to be someone who follows the game quite closely, and so for me to not know that this was coming in the update was crazy to me. But that's what happens when there's no PTS and patch notes that outline every single gun, exotic, and whatever else may be coming. And sure enough, over the next few days on Reddit, I saw several posts about people saying, what's this exotic? What's this exotic? And it was just a lot of fun. It was a fun time. But because of this, we also saw the major technical failures of Warlords, from progression blocking bugs to the overtuned heroic NPCs and group scaling, and some of that stuff wasn't resolved for a good 3 months when TU10 dropped in June. And I think by then is when they mostly ironed it out. So there's definitely a balance, like I said, between the stability and surprise when it comes to whether or not you implement a PTS for an update. And this is the exact debate that people are having right now regarding TU13. Now I want to make this very clear. If TU13 is being planned to release in December, which has been and still is my prediction, but it is not confirmed, and Massive is planning on having a PTS for the update, then that better be coming soon. Because like I mentioned earlier, a PTS is only worthwhile if you give it enough time to have multiple phases of iteration for people to try out. They usually refer to these as waves, right? Wave 1, wave 2, etc., and then leaving enough time afterward for them to go and make more final changes before the update goes live. We saw a failure of this in 1.5 of the Division 1, where they had delayed the update from its original planned release in order to fit in 1.4, which was a totally necessary but originally unplanned update that they introduced to redesign a lot of the endgame. But the issue was that they still had to get out 1.6 and Last Stand by the end of year 1 in order for them not to break their agreement of 3 expansions during year 1. So 1.4 kicked out 1.5 from its original October slot. 1.6 was still coming in February, so 1.5 got squeezed into the holiday 2016 season, and then it only got like a 1.5 week PTS phase, and then it dropped shortly afterwards. And what we saw there was that there was a fair amount of balancing issues in that update, as opposed to 1.4, which had ample time to test and implement on the PTS. So if Massive is planning on doing a PTS for TU13, I think that if they want it to be, successful in aiding with balancing and bug fixes, it needs to drop by mid to late October. This will give them a solid 3-week PTS window, 4 if they want it, and as I believe they did a similar thing with TU10 and 11, that means they'll have time for multiple phases for people to test out, and then they should still have several weeks afterwards to implement that feedback and put in the final, finishing touches for the update on whatever December date they may have in mind. But again, that's if they're planning on having one. And I'll be honest, given the ultra-secretive approach we've seen them take with TU13 thus far, I really don't know if that's in the cards or not. If they wanted to do one, it would mean finally doing a state of the game or some sort of event to reveal at least the general premise of the update and what content is going to be put on the PTS for testing. And given how Ubisoft has acted with this stuff so far throughout the year, I really don't know if I see them doing it. Now, that's not total reason to panic, right? Unlike Warlords, where I think they were under a lot of pressure to deliver this big cohesive expansion by a strict March deadline. As I covered in my last video, the release window of this update has always been flexible, and it seems as though the development team themselves have agreed that December is a good date for them to target. Assumingly, this means that the development has been going well. And again, unlike with Warlords, where part of the team was dealing with live content like TU6 and the big changes that brought, in our current day, the devs have had zero big obligations to the live game since February with the next-gen update and apparel event, and that was even pretty minimal. TU12 was as well. There hasn't really been a big content update since like TU11, which was last September. So presumably, and hopefully, if they aren't planning on a PTS, or if Ubisoft isn't going to allow one, then we could hope that this, lower stress development window will allow them to have more time for testing, so that they can hopefully sort this stuff out on their own before it reaches our hands. Again, that's all hopefully. Now, in regard to the main question of if TU13 should or does need a PTS, the majority of the responses I've seen is yes, it does. And while I don't disagree with that, I do have a bit of a differing opinion, and that is, I think it should have a PTS for sure, but without fully spoiling the surprise to come. And by that, I mean, there's a way to test all of this without just putting the entire update on the PTS server. If you'll recall, back in year 1 of the Division 2, that's basically what they did with TU5 in Episode 1. They just put the entirety of the update on the test server, and then the main missions of White Oak and Manning Zoo were up for all to see long before the majority of the player base would ever get to try them. And it just deflated any of the real anticipation those may have been bringing. And if they do a PTS for TU13, I would like to see it where they don't just put all the big content pieces on there. I think the PTSs have always been best at resolving balancing issues rather than bug fixes, so what I would rather see is a PTS server go live with all of the new weapons, gear, exotics, maybe even the talent reworks or gear changes if we end up seeing that, and let the players just test all of that stuff out in the pre-existing content we already have. Because even if some of that new gear is tied to the new game mode or whatever else may be coming, at least you're not spoiling the big surprise we've been anticipating all this time. If anything, it might even generate further anticipation and hype for the update. Because what that could do is just come out and reveal the new gear, weaponry, and all of that for the update because it's going to be on the PTS, but then say, that's all we're showing you. The new game mode and the other surprise content will not be revealed until the update drops. That would be kind of fun, because if there's a lot of cool stuff in the new gear, you'll start to wonder, will this be from the new season, or is it tied to the new game mode, or legendaries, or something else? And in my eye, it's just kind of a win-win. The community isn't fully shut out. We get a sneak peek behind the curtain at the new gear and weapons we're getting. That said gear and weapons gets to go through some balancing iterations before launch, which can do nothing but help for the overall, stability of the new update, and we would still get to retain that element of surprise for this update that has got to be one of the most secretive and anticipated updates in Division's history. So ultimately, to the question of what's better, surprise or stability, my answer would be, why not both? Thank you all so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe with notifications on so you can be updated every time I upload. Let me know your thoughts on the debate surrounding a potential TU13 PTS. Do you think the update needs one? And if so, how would you go about it? Would you only put some stuff out for balancing on there, like I suggested, or would you just dump all the new content out at once? I'm certainly very curious to hear everyone's thoughts about this one. I'm sure it's going to be quite a lively discussion. One more time, I will shout out that tomorrow, Sunday the 19th at 5:30 p.m. Pacific and 8:30 Eastern, is the Division 1 Xbox Last Stand event. Stay tuned to my community tab and social channels for reminders and updates about that. You can find the link to those below in the description, by the way. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, so I really hope to see you all there. But yeah, everyone, that is going to do it for me. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and until the next one, guys, RogueGold out.